And ever since, he's claimed credit for ending 8 global conflicts, from the Middle East to South Asia to Eastern Europe. A ceasefire between Iran and Hamas in October 2025, a 12-day Israel-Iran conflict halted after US pressure, tensions cooled, he says, between India and Pakistan, Armenia and Azerbaijan, Serbia and Kosovo, Egypt and Ethiopia, Thailand and Cambodia, and Rwanda and the DRC. 8 wars stopped on paper.
I settled 8 other wars. India, Pakistan. I settled other wars that were Vladimir Putin called me, Armenia, Azerbaijan. He said, I can't believe you settled that one. They were going on for 35 years. I settled it in one day. And President Putin called me. He said, you know, I can't believe I worked on that war for 10 years trying to settle it. I couldn't do it. I said, do me a favor, focus on settling your war. Don't worry about that one.
But here's the rub. Trump's peace claims are peaking only alongside rising US firepower. Pentagon records show over 600 US air and drone strikes in 2025 alone. Diplomacy in one hand, detonators in the other. And threading through it all, the Nobel Peace Prize. On social media, the president posted more than 6,500 times in his first year, averaging 18 posts a day. In bursts, he returned again and again to one theme. Why not me? In October 2025, he publicly fumed after the prize went to Venezuelan opposition leader Marcia Corina Machado. By January 2026, he posted a photo of Machado's physical Nobel medal gifted to him, calling it a wonderful gesture. 6 Nobel mentions in a single post. Claims he deserved it 4 or 5 times. And a blunt message to Norway. Peace, he said, isn't free. One look on Trump's Truth Social account and you'll see his MAGA base and supporters seeing strength in his actions. Critics, on the other hand, only see more and more instability. 8 conflicts claimed as victories and a Nobel Prize that still hasn't arrived. The question now, is this peace by design or pressure building for the next explosion? With Arjun Samar Mahindran, Bureau Report, NDTV.
I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
The story goes far beyond the countries Donald Trump has attacked and the wars he has claimed to stop. Trump sent another signal from the dais at Davos, and Europe, well, it heard it loud and clear. First time since World War II, EU leaders are openly questioning whether the US is still on their side or now actually standing in their way. Donald Trump backed off on tariffs, yes, but his words on Greenland, calling it America's territory, landed like a lightning bolt across Europe. And leaders in the European continent are now thinking that the statement that they have heard now is what they have to now decide whether the NATO still holds or not. 1949 is when NATO came into being. 1951 is when the Greenland Treaty and agreement between the US and Greenland was signed with Denmark. Since then, what has changed now in 2026? Everybody sitting in Davos was asking that question. Every European leader on the continent is asking that question. But there are no answers because no one knows what Donald Trump is willing to do and how far is he willing to go. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than tariffs. It's the sound of an alliance that's quietly cracking with disbelief. Since 1951, it held true, and 1949. In fact, Article 5 of the treaty, which says attack on one is attack on all, was triggered by the US after 9/11. All NATO allies stepped in, supported America then, because the war on terror was not just America's war, it was NATO's war. But now they're all thinking whether it was worth their while or not. To talk more on what exactly is Donald Trump thinking, and more importantly, can NATO survive what Donald Trump is doing right now to Greenland? To talk on that, Sarah Claire joins me on the broadcast. She's a professor, foreign policy commentator. Sarah, thanks much for speaking to me on Faultlines. The world, especially European leaders, are still trying to wrap their heads around what Donald Trump actually said in Davos. He said that he wants to start negotiations on Greenland at the very earliest. What negotiations can you actually have with a territory, with a country that doesn't belong to you?
Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, I would say, Trump's goal is really to strengthen NATO. And especially when it comes to Greenland, he sees that as a weak point. And so sometimes that can be uncomfortable, I think, for our European allies. And there are growing pains with NATO as it tries to adapt to 21st century with Russia and China, who are now near peer competitors. And so some changes will have to be made. And as far as Greenland, the negotiations, I believe today he actually announced that he discussed a framework deal with the Secretary General of NATO. So he does want to go about this in a diplomatic way. And he may use tariffs and different things like that if he needs to. But my hope and my take is that, hopefully NATO will come around to seeing how critical this really is for everybody.
Sarah, what happens in the eventuality that NATO says that Greenland doesn't belong to America and they are backing Greenlanders, they're backing the Danes completely? What happens to NATO? What happens to the US and European alliance, the transatlantic alliance?
Well, I think Trump said today in his speech that, if they don't agree with him on this, then he's not going to use force, but he will remember it. And I think what to take away from that is that he's talking about the U.S. spends a lot of money and a lot of military power defending Europe. And we do that without asking for much in return. And so we may choose, to lessen some of those security commitments and put them in other critical areas that are more critical to U.S. national interest and the Western Hemisphere and all those things that he's talked about. If Europe can't kind of be more reciprocal in the relationship. But I don't think it means that he wants to go to war with anybody.
No, he doesn't want to go to war, but he covets a territory that doesn't belong to him. He also talked about the fact that he used tariffs, and that's how a lot of his allies actually came back on the negotiating table. But many believe that the long arc of using tariffs for geopolitical goals has now been exhausted in his 1 year in office. The question is, are we then looking at the end of NATO during Donald Trump's second term?
Well, I don't think so. I think that his use of tariffs, he's actually talked about it and he's said, it's been something that he's leaned on to kind of push through a lot of these peace deals that he's worked on. And these economic tools are something that he is very adept at, maybe more adept at than some other presidents who chose other tactics when they were trying to get a deal done. And so he's actually been able to lean on that in a way of pursuing peace rather than going to a forceful choice. And in terms of NATO surviving his term, I think President Trump actually wants to strengthen NATO. And the way he goes about it can be kind of abrasive, certainly, but I do believe that's his ultimate goal.
I'm glad that you're using the term abrasive when it comes to Donald Trump. That is most certainly the case, and he's really rubbed his European allies the wrong way. But let me ask you this final question, which is that when you talk about Donald Trump's 1 year in office, he's completed a year. He says he's the peace president. He should get a Nobel Peace Prize. He isn't getting one. But the fact is, here is an American president who's actually ordered more strikes than his predecessor. 600 plus strikes that we in fact documented right here on Faultlines. Your response to that?
Well, I would say I'm not surprised by that because his predecessor, President Biden, didn't do anything during his term at all in any foreign policy, domestic policy. He was basically absent. He
certainly did not get Maduro. You're right about that. And he most certainly didn't tell Greenland that this is a territory we were stupid enough to let go of. You're right about that. But Sarah, thanks much for joining me on this edition of Faultlines. Always a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. Well, viewers, if you really take off your blinkers and see how things are unfolding right now, it's hard to believe that Donald Trump has only finished a quarter of his term. Yes, he's only done 1 out of his 4 years. And his big focus going forward is now on Greenland. Greenland matters to Donald Trump for many reasons. But beyond the resources and the significance of the Arctic route, Greenland is key to proving that America is still the most powerful nation on earth. And Donald Trump is the most powerful president that America has seen in a long time, since Ronald Reagan. And unlike Venezuela, Europe can take heart from the fact that Donald Trump is willing to start negotiations. Which way they will go? Well, the Danes don't know, the Greenlanders don't know, even maybe people inside the Oval Office don't know. But here is what many do know, how it may end up unfolding. Before invading Greenland, assuming the talks do not progress at all, Trump may exit NATO. And his new organization, the Board of Peace, which was ostensibly created for rebuilding Gaza, could become the new umbrella multilateral organization, the new UN. He himself has said it. He envisages it. The new NATO even. So will it be the end of the old NATO, and will it be the beginning of a new organization that Donald Trump will spearhead and then take over his Greenland ambitions? Well, we'll have to wait and watch out for as to how this unfolds. Well, viewers, on that note, slipping into a very short break, we come back on the other side and tell you more about why the Chinese recce drone that briefly entered Taiwan is causing huge uncertainty in the entire Taiwan Strait. Stay with us, we get you that details.
I don't sugarcoat. I shoot straight and tell you stories the way they need to be told. Unfiltered, unafraid, unmissable. That's how I roll. Watch me, Priyanka Deo, on NDTV World. Namaste.
Rajasthan is history, culture, and much more. And I have been reporting on all things royal for more than 25 years.
The colors, the culture, and the complexities of the Northeast is different from the rest of the country. I have been bringing the Northeast closer to the capital for over 15 years. Madhya Pradesh is the heart of India, and I have been capturing its every beat for over 10 years, covering the corridors of power, what is said, what is left unsaid, and what it actually means for you and me. I have it all covered.
Kashmir is often called paradise on earth, a region that has been in a state of flux. From conflict to India's crowning glory, I have been reporting and decoding Jammu and Kashmir for last 3 decades.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Faultlines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
Now, a Chinese recce drone briefly entered the airspace above the Taiwan-controlled Pratas Islands at the northern edge of the South China Sea last week, prompting Taipei to condemn the move as both provocative and irresponsible. Democratically governed Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, says it faces near daily military pressure from Beijing, including frequent drone activity, though direct violations of the Taiwanese airspace do remain rare. This report tells you why this is an attempt by the Chinese to wear Taiwanese down in the long-drawn process to get Taiwan. Take a look.
Chilling fest in the skies over Taiwan as China crosses a new red line, flying a high-altitude surveillance drone into Taiwan's airspace. Analysts say China's unprecedented action exposes a dangerous new vulnerability and sharpens the risk of escalation. Taipei says a WZ-7 soaring Dragon drone entered the sky above the Pratas Island for 4 tense minutes before radio warnings were sent. drone flew far beyond the reach of Taiwan's air defenses at an altitude of nearly 18,000 meters, underlining what experts are describing as Beijing's growing technological edge. Kratas is a small but strategic atoll in the South China Sea, 420 kilometers from southern Taiwan. It lies directly along submarine routes that could prove crucial in any future conflict. Experts suggest China has found another soft spot. They can enter Taiwan's airspace with impunity, and if Taiwan shoots it down later, Beijing can of course shift the blame. China claims Taiwan as its territory and has never ruled out taking it by force. In recent years, China has intensified drills, patrols, and now drone operations, inching ever closer to Taiwan's outlying islands. The question is no longer whether China can test Taiwan's defenses, but how often it will do so and how low it may fly next.
2027 is expected to be the year when China will attempt an invasion on Taiwan, or at least that's been the stated objective for many years. Taiwan matters for Xi Jinping. From a unification objective to create near total domination of South China Sea. But here's a reason why these recce's that are happening right now are not an attack, because it's not so easy. Remember, we now live in times of asymmetric warfare. Ukraine doesn't even have a traditional naval fleet and managed to destroy Russia's fabled Black Sea fleet, all with the help of unmanned drones. That's the reason why China understands that any invasion of Taiwan is not so easy, because any invasion will be long detected and Chinese troops will be extremely vulnerable, will face huge losses even before they cross the entire strait. And then they will get on to fighting a land campaign on terrain that's totally unsuitable, making things even more difficult for the Chinese. So what you are seeing right now are efforts to wear the Taiwanese down, because the Chinese know in times of asymmetric warfare, their stated goal of 2027 invasion of Taiwan may not come through. And what could happen is many levels of losses that Xi Jinping cannot afford. Well, viewers, on that note, it's time out on this edition of Faultlines. Thanks so much for watching. We come back next week with yet another conflict, yet another story to tell you, to decode, and tell you the many layers and the many fault lines that exist around the world.
Rajasthan is history, culture, and much more. And I have been reporting on all things royal for more than 25 years.
The colors, the culture, and the complexities of the Northeast is different from the rest of the country. I have been bringing the Northeast closer to the capital for over 15 years.
Madhya Pradesh is the heart of India, and I have been capturing its every beat for over 10 years, covering the corridors of power, what is said, what is left unsaid, and what it actually means for you and me. I have it all covered.
Kashmir is often called paradise on earth, a region that has been in a state of flux from conflict to India's crowning glory. I have been reporting and decoding Jammu and Kashmir for last 3 decades.
Tensions are flaring over Greenland, and it seems the world's largest island has outsized its importance. Talk about military strategy, rare earth minerals, and Arctic shipping. The US, Europe, and Russia all have their eyes on this icy frontier. Meanwhile, here's exactly why Greenland matters more than you might think. First and foremost, its strategic location. Its strategic location in the Arctic. Now, Greenland sits right at the crossroads of the Arctic, positioned between North America, Russia, and Europe. Its location makes it critical for monitoring potential military threats, missile trajectories, and even airspace control. Next up, it's strategically placed between US, Russia, and Europe. Now, NATO countries, which also includes the US and Denmark, have emphasized Greenland as a linchpin in Arctic defense strategy against Russia, if I may. Significant for military monitoring, early warning systems, and control of airspaces. Now, this island hosts radar stations and early warning systems which are essential for detecting military launches from potential adversaries. Control of Greenland's airspace allowed Allied forces to project power and also maintain situational awareness across whole of the North Atlantic. Analysts meanwhile say this is why any foreign presence in Greenland, particularly by the US, is strategically prioritized. Next up, we talk about natural resources and economic interests. Greenland's terrain is rich in rare earth minerals, including lithium, uranium, nickel, and cobalt, you name it. Now, these minerals are very critical for manufacturing technologies, renewable energy solutions, and of course, military applications like batteries and all-important electronics. It's also rich in rare earth minerals like lithium, uranium, nickel, and cobalt, as I was just mentioning. Now, in these, lithium and cobalt are essential for electronic vehicle batteries and energy storage systems. Meanwhile, uranium and nickel are key to nuclear energy and defense applications, making Greenland an economic prize beyond its strategic location. Economics, meanwhile, also warn that any access to these resources could determine technological and both defense competitiveness in the coming decades. Next up, minerals critical for technology, defense, and renewable energy. Now, governments worldwide, as we know, are tracking mining developments very closely, especially signaling that the resources control is a growing geopolitical concern, especially in the Trump 2.0 administration. Arctic shipping routes. Now, Arctic shipping routes like the North Sea route and the Northwest Passage are increasingly important due to melting ice, which also offers significantly shorter journeys all the way between Asia, Europe, and North America, essentially cutting times and also cost in challenging the Suez and the Panama Canal dominance. As the Arctic ice melts, new shipping lanes could also very well open up. Now, these lanes could shorten travel times between Europe, Asia, and North America, even further transforming global trade routes. So while Greenland might look like a frozen wilderness, it's actually a chessboard for military, economic, and shipping power. Watching this Arctic giant could also reveal the next moves in global geopolitics.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome to Sreet Kaur Sahani and you're watching The Breakfast Show. We've got an action-packed show lined up just for you, but let's first take you through the headlines of the hour. Mumbai Mayor power play peaks. Now Mayor's chair awaiting verdict as Shinde and Fadnavis meet on the Mayor is likely. Now the power meet will decide the Mumbai Mayor's post. PM Modi trains guns at the DMK. PM's all-out attack on the dynastic DMK is what he says. The PM breaks up the Deepam Rao in Tamil Nadu and says that time's up for the DMK. Noida urban death traps exposed. 24-hour NDTV reality check. Now there seems to be broken planning and deadly consequences.